Welcome to the Power Monkey Podcast, where we chat with the best in the world about what they do. I'm your host, Dave Durantu, with my co-host, Chad Vaughn, and on today's episode, we interview Emma Cary. Emma is a rising superstar within the CrossFit community. She is 17 years old and part of this teenage group of girls that are making a run at the podium. She finished third at the Granite Games just a few weeks ago. Talk a little bit about what that Granite Games experience was like, some of the pluses, some of the minuses, some of the hits and misses along with her experience along that weekend, how that's going to be a learning experience going into the games for her first time next month, what her training environment is like being alone, not having a team, not having her coach in-house with her. She really is wise beyond her years. She was impressive to both me and Chad. I can't tell you how much we think she has to give to this competitive world of CrossFit over the next short term and long term. We really see her ability being one that will end her on the podium sometime soon. We hope you guys enjoy this podcast. All right, well, Emma, how are you doing? Thanks so much for taking the time to be with Chad and I today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing amazing. Games training is so much fun, so hard, but I love how intentional everything is. And I love seeing some big weaknesses that were exposed at the Granite Games really coming along.
Amazing. All right, so you brought up some things there that I was planning on getting to, so we can just jump right into it. Let's talk about Granite Games a little bit, because that was kind of a coming out party for you, for a lot of the CrossFit community who maybe don't know kind of what's going on really up close and personal. You're 17 years old, kind of hit the ground running. And what's really interesting about the Granite Games is that there seemed to be a whole group of the next generation of great CrossFit athletes kind of coming to the forefront, and you being kind of front and center there. You and your partner, who seemed to be right next to you entire weekend, Mel O'Brien. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about your experience with Granite Games, because it really stood out to me a lot with the way that you approached the events. Now, there were a few that I wanted to kind of discuss. The first event, and I know Chad would love talking about this one, but the snatch event, can we go over that a little bit? Because it was incredibly impressive to watch you snatch. You ended up snatching 200 pounds in that third lift. It looked relatively easy for you, but can you give us a little bit of a mindset on the lifts in general? And did you feel like starting out with the snatch was a great way to kick off the weekend for you?
Yeah, I love snatch just in general. But I was especially excited to lift because I've struggled with that in the past. There've been so many times that the heavy barbell event has kept me from accomplishing what I wanted to. And I knew this time that wouldn't be the case. So I was just so excited to prove to myself how much all of that hard work had paid off. I knew 185 was going to be a sure thing lift. My max was 197, so I knew I was going to get 200. But I thought 185 would be really safe to start. You don't really expect so much, well, at least in previous competitions. This one I expected it. But you get all warm, you hit your last lift, and then you're in the corrals for at least 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. So just knowing that sometimes makes the first lift feel a little bit weird, I think is an advantage, just because I have done stuff like that in past competitions. I'm so sorry. My dog is making so much noise.
No worries.
But I knew that there was not going to be much room for error, but I also knew that I was not going to make a mistake. I trusted my training. 185 felt good, went to 195. It was like maybe the best snatch I've ever done. And my coach was right in front of me. I tried to get him to let me put on 205, but he just shook his head. And I'm really glad I went for the 200. But I definitely could have done 205, even though in the end that would not have affected the placement at all, because the next lift was 210. Mm-hmm. So my coach always does know what he's talking about, even when it's really tough to listen. I think that was the highlight of my weekend, just because it felt like there was no weight on the bar. It felt like I could do absolutely anything out there, and that was such a cool feeling.
Well, I know Chad probably has some questions about your snatch, but one of the things that stood out to me was your bottom position. Like you settled into that position so well and actually held it for a couple of seconds, it looked like, on each of the lifts before you even stood up. And it looked like, to me, like you're right, like 205, 210 was probably within reach without too much issue. But as soon as I saw the lifts, I was like, man, Chad's going to be so proud of that bottom position, just so showing it off. But Chad, I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at it, what you thought about those lifts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was a solid lift. Emma, you move very well. You've got great technique, great timing, great positions, great bottom position, as Dave said. And to have that ability to have control in such a low position like that is a huge advantage. And hopefully you'll continue to hone that through the years and use it just like you did there. But it's interesting that you said that you've struggled in the past in heavy barbell movements in competition specifically. And but you've been strong for a while. I mean, I'm sure you've been lifting 185. How long, when was your first time to lift like 185?
I think last July.
Last July. Okay. So last July. But you've been lifting heavy. You've been doing, that's a heavy snatch. 185 is heavy. 200 pounds is a solid heavy snatch for any human to lift, really. So what is it about heavy barbell movements in competition that you've struggled with in the past, and how did you work on that to ensure that you were ready and perform the way that you did this time?
Yeah, I think that one of my most heartbreaking competition experiences was the 2020 Open in late 2019, when I had gotten like in the world on the women's leaderboard. This was after I just turned 16, or no, I was still 15 at this time, but I was trying to qualify elite for the games because I had gotten a 9th, a 12th, and a 9th. So I was sitting well within a qualifying position. And then the heavy barbell came out, and I knew I was not as strong as a lot of the top women in the sport. But I never thought I would finish that low. And I got 2 clean and jerks at 205, which was a PR, but that was like, I think 570 something. That dropped me way out of the qualifying position and was just so heartbreaking to have come so close and be limited by one thing. But looking back on that now, I'm so glad that happened, because it showed me that I need to be stronger, but more importantly, that I have no idea how I can get myself stronger. So that was whenever I started working with my coach, well, actually just a few months later in early 2020. And that's when things really took off. I think the biggest thing we have done that I wasn't doing by myself is just focused accessory work. Like I knew it was important and I did a little bit of accessory work, but it's definitely not as fun as Metcons and as heavy lifts. And I just did not spend the time on that I should have. And like now I do so much accessory work and I can see where it could seem boring, but now I know that really pays off. Like those little things are what add up to big things. So I think just trusting my coach's process and having an amazing coach is what's gotten me so strong.
So you talk about your coach and him coming in really fairly recently in the scheme of things, but are you saying that you got yourself to the point of placing that high in the open, almost in games qualifying position, getting 2 cleans with 205, which is a heavy clean as well, and now you're almost snatching that. But you got yourself to that point. You didn't have a coach before, just kind of you in the gym playing around. Is that how it was?
Yeah, I started CrossFit when I was 10, did the kids class about a year, then moved into the adult class and stayed there for about a year. But then I had no idea what it took to be at this level. But I saw that I needed to do more and I needed to have more focused training. So whenever I was about 12, I stepped away from doing the class workouts and started just writing my own programming, which I would not recommend to anyone. I learned so much doing that, but I had no idea what I was doing. I just liked to be in control, and I knew what I was bad at, and I was not afraid to work really, really hard to be good at it. Um, I was not afraid to suffer to improve, and I didn't avoid doing what I was bad at. Um, but things just didn't really fit together like they do now. Um, and I'm grateful for that experience, but I would not recommend that to anyone.
Wow. Went through that at 12 years old. I mean, that's incredible, Dave. There's so many things that we could talk about and say about that. And it's
Honestly,
just, it's amazing the maturity that you have and the things that you were able to recognize and see about yourself.
you learned at 12 what we learned at 30.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I'm still trying to learn that stuff, Dave, but I want to just take a side note real quick, and I hate to do this, but because I want to come back and talk about those experiences, but just sitting here looking at you, Emma, and listening to you talk, you're very soft spoken. You have a completely different look on your face right now than any of the videos that I've seen you training in or competing in, or the pictures. You look like a completely different person, and it's like it's I don't even know the animals that I compare, but I mean, you know, the look on your face is very animal like when you're competing and when you're training. And you even mentioned something in one of your posts about the Granite Games, say that you came in looking for a fight. I don't see that coming out of your mouth right now as I'm looking at you, and as you're talking to us right now. So that mindset, where does that come from? Do you feel like a different person when you're training and when you're competing versus normal life? How do you differentiate?
That's such a good question, and I really honestly never thought about that. But I think you have to be different, and you have to train different and compete different. Um, and like a lot of my younger years were kind of spent just wanting to fit in. But CrossFit helped me see that it's cool not to fit in. Like, I don't want to fit in on the competition floor. I want to be the best one out there.
Mhm.
I want to stand out because I'm so far ahead of everybody. And obviously, that does not always happen. And sometimes you stand out because you're behind everybody. Um, but I have just learned that it is okay to want something so much that it affects how you train, how you compete, just how you carry yourself in those situations. But I don't think you necessarily need to turn that off, because I don't like to take a lot of time to just unwind or whatever. I like to stay so focused and so driven. Um, like, I don't think that that is something that you can turn off, but I also think that you need to be able to have joy. And sometimes, whenever you are just so obsessed with controlling one outcome, like winning,
Mhm.
that takes away from your ability to find joy in the process. Um, so that's always a balance I'm trying to find, and something I've been working on a lot in my training, because I love to train and I love to compete, and I also love to win. And I train to win, I compete to win. Um, but that can't be the only goal, because if I win, but I'm not the person I want to be, then to me, I just won't be fulfilled. I won't be happy, and I won't feel like I've really done what I have been called to do. Um, so I think it's a balance, and even if one shines through more than the other at a certain point, that doesn't mean the other one's not there.
Dave, I'm still trying to learn that stuff that she's talking about, and
Yeah.
we talk about abilities and talents all the time with athletes, of course. And there's a certain combination of characteristics and factors that one needs to have to be a champion, to be the best that they can be. And from what I can see, obviously you're very physically talented, Emma. But I don't know if what do you think, Dave? Maybe her greatest attribute is the mindset that she has. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, the things that she's saying, again, these are all things that we learned so much later in our career. And Emma, the way you're talking about it, if we didn't know your age, and we just kind of brought you out here and we're just listening to you, I think our listeners and we would think that you were a lot older from the things that you're describing and from what you've gone through. So it's really impressive to see how far along you are in terms of mindset, and your physical abilities are well established, and people can watch you do your lifts and be in awe. But the mental side of what you're saying is actually putting you way ahead of the game in terms of where I think most athletes are at your age. So kudos to you on that. But I do want to bring up another event from the Granite Games that touches on what you're talking about. And it was the last event. And last event, I think maybe exposed some things, or I'm interested in what your take was at the end of that event. And you were leading the event. You got to the overhead lunges and you were leading, and that potentially could have put you, well, you just needed to, if you would have stayed in the lead, you would have won.
Yeah.
And you were on a mission. It looked like, the world was going to have to fall down for you to try to put those dumbbells down. And you got towards one of those last steps and the dumbbells fell. You had to go all the way back. And then a lot of pieces kind of fell from there. I'm curious what your mindset is now after having gone through it, because it seems like you don't really hold anything back. Like you kind of have the mindset of, I am at 100 at all times in competition. And after going through that, would you have changed the way that you approach that event? Would you have dropped the dumbbells prior to, going that next segment, shaken out, and then trying to finish up from there? Or would you have attacked it in that same way? Is there a learning experience there, or are you still having that same mindset?
Honestly, a little bit of both. I love talking about this event. Well, I made a lot of mistakes at the Granite Games, but I will never consider that event a mistake. I knew I was taking a risk, but it was an intentional risk. It was calculated. And I knew that I had my ticket to the games mathematically secured. The only options to me were win or not win. And honestly, if I didn't win, I didn't care if I was second, third, fourth, or fifth. I was willing to risk just a safe second place or third place, or just maybe risk an okay performance to have a really great one. And I knew what could happen if I failed, but I also knew how great the reward would be if I succeeded. And I didn't this time, but I will always be so proud that I was bold enough and confident enough to take the risk. Um, After I was so heartbroken, I was there to win. I knew I didn't need to win, but I wanted to win. I always want to win, and that is just who I am. And I would never try to turn that off, even if I was like, oh well, I just need to be top 5. I never want to be complacent like that. I always want to go out there and see what I'm capable of. And sometimes it's less than I think, and sometimes it's more than I think.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back on the video, it is really hard for me to watch because I was so far ahead. I see that I could have broke maybe after the first 15 feet, just taking a quick breath, and maybe been able to finish the 30 feet, or maybe even broke again after 30 feet, and then pick them up for the last 15. But at the time, I was doing what I thought I needed to do to win. And I don't regret that. I'm sad, or I was sad that it didn't work out this time, but I would probably be even more sad had I have set the dumbbells down, gotten past, and lost because I wasn't willing to take the risk. But it definitely was a learning experience. And maybe had I not have made some of the mistakes earlier in the weekend, I wouldn't have went on the floor with the just risk everything mindset. There were so many awesome things I learned, mainly just the importance of maximizing my performance. I mean, it's important to be really aware of where everyone else is. And I mean, it's important to beat people when you're competing. But sometimes just that obsession with winning and feeling like that was the only option really kept me from maximizing my own performance. And it's hard feeling like I was capable of more and I couldn't do that when it mattered. But I think that was the best thing that could have happened just for my career. I think that that taught me lessons. But also, I mean, I've always wanted to win, but it showed me how much I hate losing. And I never want to feel that way again, even though in that moment I was so happy, knew I was going to the games. I knew I had let myself down because I was capable of more. And I will just always hold myself to such a high standard. Um, that hurt. And as we've gotten farther away from it, it's been easy to be like, well, I didn't really need to win anyway. But I want to remember that hurt, and I want to train, and just I want every action and every choice I make to get me closer to never feeling that hurt again. Um, I've won before, and I know how amazing that feels. That is the feeling I train for. And I think it was so good for me to kind of experience the opposite feeling. And that feeling will keep me hungry, I think, forever.
That's amazing. Chad, super impressive, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I can't, Emma. I just want you to keep talking. I'm just going to keep taking it in. It's all amazing, and so many inspirational words there for myself, Dave, and our listeners to take in. And I'm excited for our listeners to listen into this because they're going to get so much out of it. And from a 17-year-old, it's amazing. And I have to wonder where does this drive come from? I've heard you say, I want to win so many times, and you're learning what that's going to take. And I think some of what that's going to take, as you mentioned, that you're learning is to focus on, you know, performing the best that you can. And when you perform the best that you can, what's the byproduct of that for you? It's most likely going to be winning, right? Which is
Yeah.
great. But you also said that you want to stand out by beating everyone. Where does this drive come from to stand out in that way to win? Where, I mean, again, only 17 and started CrossFit at 10. You started doing your own programming at 12. So where in the world is this coming from?
I honestly feel like there are a lot of things you can teach. Like I feel like I was very mentally weak when I started CrossFit, but I've always had the drive to be the best I could be. Um, just way before I knew what it would take, I had this drive. So, really, my answer to that is that I think it's God given. And I don't really think that there's any explanation besides that, because in whatever I've done, really my entire life, I've just wanted to do it to the best of my ability. Um, and just probably a couple weeks after I started CrossFit, I got to watch my first competition. And then I learned about the Open. I learned about, I think at that time it was regionals and then the games, got to watch a lot of that stuff. And then the goal got bigger. And I knew I wanted to be the best in the world. And that is just something I think I've always had in my heart. And I think it's so cool that I've never really had to set a goal for myself. The goal has always been to win. Um, I mean, I'm never like, well, it'd be cool to get top 10 or whatever. It doesn't matter who I'm competing against. I want to win. And even whenever I feel like that might not be reasonable, um, because I see experience and age and just so many advantages that people have over me, but I know that I will never count myself out. And even if I don't win, just because I feel like this gift is God given, I want to use it to bring glory to God. Um, and I know I kind of said this earlier, but if I win and I'm not proud of the person I was, to me, that's not worth it. To me, there are things I want to embody more than just winning. Um, I want to be loving and I want to be joyful, and I just think that I've been given such an awesome platform to do that. And I think that this, like physical gifts, but also just the mental gift of, I believe, wanting it really more than anyone else does. I think that that will take me far, and I always want to use that in a really good way. So I think that that is just where my drive comes from.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, you've got a superpower. That's such a superpower that you have. And like I said before, I mean, I think your greatest attribute, beyond the physical, that's going to uh, take your physical ability to your greatest possible destination. And it's going to be fun just to sit back and watch it. Right, Dave?
Absolutely. And I'm kind of fascinated by this whole generation of next great athletes that grew up specifically with CrossFit. And
Hmm.
you play any other sports growing up prior to doing CrossFit, or was CrossFit kind of your step into the fitness area? I mean, it was 10 years old, so I can't imagine you were doing a ton prior, but did you play any other sports, or, did you do anything with CrossFit?
Yeah, I did tumbling from when I was 4 to when I was 9. So never like any competitive gymnastics. I didn't like it that much. I thought it was kind of hard, but I thought, even then, I liked to push my body. But then whenever I found CrossFit, I found that I could really be passionate about that feeling where you don't think you can go on, and then you do. And you know that you've just gotten better. And I think that's an amazing feeling. I didn't really have that drive so much whenever I did gymnastics or when I did tumbling. Um, but I still think it gave me a really awesome background of just body awareness and everything, until I hurt my wrist, not real bad, but took a little break from gymnastics. I was planning on coming back. Then I found CrossFit and fell in love.
Amazing. So let's just consider and get our listeners wrapped around this a little bit. You're a professional athlete. You're a professional athlete at 17 years old. You're competing with people that, you know, don't really have a full-time job other than being an athlete. They're training, upwards of 8 hours a day. Their whole lives revolve around it. How do you, as a 17-year-old and newly turned 17-year-old, you're a young 17, your high school age, how does the rest of your life kind of fit into your training? Because essentially you're training like a female gymnast would be training for the Olympics, who is, homeschooling and waking up in the morning and training and doing some schoolwork along with their training. But the priority is your training. And being that CrossFit is so new, I'm curious how this fits into your life in terms of your social life, your friends, your schoolwork, and all the other things that come along with being a teenager and still being able to perform at the highest of levels. What does a daily life look like for you? And are you able to kind of balance all of those in a way that you feel is manageable?
Balance is really hard whenever I want to do so many things at the highest level. Because I'm not training just for fun. I do have fun, but I want to pour every ounce of me into every session at the gym. And really the same with schoolwork, just on like a lower level. Um, I don't, I try my very hardest. I study as much as I need to. And sometimes I do feel like there's not enough time in the day to do everything as well as I want to do it. Um, this past year, my junior year, was the first year that I've gotten to do anything online. In the past, I've just had 7 seated classes, and that has been really tough to balance. Training before really early, go to school there all day, train immediately. Then often it was staying up late doing homework. And I was just so tired and even kind of burned out and was not really enjoying anything I did that much. But last year was so much better. I got to do a lot of schoolwork on my rest days. Pretty much all day Sunday was just school, um, which wasn't the most fun, but it freed up time throughout the week to be more focused and intentional when I train and recover. But now that it's summer, it's so crazy to see that this is the life I want. I love how my life now revolves around training to be the best I can be. Um, 'Cause even when I was in school, I didn't do anything else. I just did school, CrossFit. There was no social life, really not a hobby at all. Um, and now that's still the case, except it's just all CrossFit. And I love that because I can train more, I can recover more, and I just feel like I am a much more energized version of myself at the gym. I feel like I can give more effort. I feel like I can really take the time that I need to and I want to journal and reflect and see what I'm proud of, but also really break things down and see what I could do better next time and where I want to make the biggest improvements for next time. Um, so I have one more year of high school, but after that, it's just this summer has been the first time I haven't taken any summer classes or anything. And I've just been fully focused on being the best CrossFitter I could be. And this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I love doing. And it's been amazing.
Wow. Again, you're speaking like someone that's well older than your age implies. So it's really impressive to listen to your comments. There's a whole group of girls your age now that are pushing to be at the top of the podium. And it's really interesting to see because a couple of years ago, Haley Adams was kind of in your shoes, and she was the new up and coming junior phenom that was going to kind of make a run at top of the podium, potentially taking Tia down. And Haley is still young, but she's going on to her third games now, and she's a veteran in a lot of ways. And it's funny her being 19, 20 years old, and suddenly she's the one of the older girls in the group. And you guys coming in at 16 and 17 years old and are pushing what it means to be fit at such a younger age. What do you think is contributing to yourself and Mal and Paige and these others that are doing such an incredible job at such a young age and competing against the Tias and the others that have been around for over a decade? What do you think is contributing to this new push of the younger girls competing at such a high level?
I, of course, think the obvious thing is that we started at a young age. But I think one of the main things is that we have such awesome role models in the sport. Kind of not really generation, but kind of the generation of athletes behind us didn't really have professional CrossFit athletes to look up to when they were growing up. I feel like they had a lot of other athletes to look up to, but since I was 10, my favorite athletes were all CrossFit athletes. And I've always loved watching them compete, learning from how they compete, seeing them make mistakes, fail, get injured, but then just come back from all of that has showed me that I can too. And I've learned so much just from watching other people compete. And I've been watching competitive CrossFit since I was 10. And even though I don't have just a lot of actual experience myself competing, I think that that's made a big difference in just knowing, kind of being able to know them better to help me know me better and how I want to compete, how I need to compete, and just the athlete and person I want to be.
It's such another important attribute there to simply be a fan of the sport that you're taking part of. I think there's so much knowledge and information to gain there. And honestly, for myself, looking back, I mean, I'm more of a fan of weightlifting now than I was when I was competing. And I wish I would have been, taking that a little bit more seriously and found those athletes to look up to, because the athletes that I think I looked up to the most were outside of my sport a little bit. So I think that's really cool that it's all about CrossFit for you. And being that you mentioned that, I got to ask, who are some of your favorite CrossFit athletes?
I think Tia and Matt, just because they're so dominant. But it's easy for people to look at them now and feel like they can't be beat because they don't make mistakes. But then you look at their first few years in the sport and they made mistakes. They failed just like me. I failed a lot. And then they've learned from their mistakes, and that's what's made them so dominant. That gives me a lot of hope and a lot of fire that I can do that too.
Yeah, it is easy to say Matt and Tia, but when you give such a solid reason behind it like that, it makes it more meaningful for sure. I think Matt and Tia, we're all fans of Matt and Tia because they are so dominant because of what they've done and what they've accomplished. And some of that has been, we know a lot about Matt because we hear Hinshaw talk about him a lot and some of his weaknesses that he, worked on for a long time with purpose to overcome. And now he's beaten, other athletes. Well, not anymore, but he's beating, athletes in long distance running and stuff like that. So what are a few of the areas that you are working on physically for yourself to be the best athlete that you can be? What are your greatest weaknesses right now?
This one I didn't so much know was a weakness until the Granite Games, but overhead dumbbell stability. My two lowest finishes, like the two times that I totally fell apart, were because I couldn't keep the dumbbell stable over my head. That's something I train. That's something that's always gone a lot better in training than it went in competition. But it was crazy to see how the fatigue of everything else affected that. And that was hard, feeling like that was something I thought I was good at. And then getting out there and being like, compared to everybody else, I'm not good at this. But that was just a learning opportunity. And I'm so glad to be learning these lessons here and now. I would rather know what to work on leading into the games, so this will never limit me again. I feel like that, and not that I don't have little weaknesses, but I think that that's the big thing that limited me at the Granite Games. But we're just a few weeks from the Granite Games and it's already so much better. I've worked so hard on that, so focused and intentional, and just trained so hungry, knowing every time I get those dumbbells over my head and I want to put them down, I'm not going to put them down, because losing sure hurts a lot more than being a little shaky overhead does. And I'm grateful to have found that weakness and right now be working with everything I have to eliminate it.
Yeah, you said that you're only a couple weeks away from that and you're already stronger there. So what specifically have you done to make that stronger? Has it just been simply getting dumbbells over your head more often in training, or is there anything else that goes along with it?
Yeah, honestly, doing pretty much everything with 65-pound dumbbells, thrusters, overhead lunges, overhead hold, overhead carries, devil's press. The 50s in competition seemed really heavy, but after a few weeks of using the 65s, I don't think the 50s will feel too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
That was something my coach gave me, and I wasn't 100% sure if I could even do one. But the first week I did 50 dumbbell thrusters. Second week I did 100 dumbbell thrusters. So we have a really good place to build going forward.
I love the progression there. And Dave, I don't know about you, but I don't want any part of 65-pound dumbbells for anything.
No, thank you. Those are just a training tool. Just a training tool. Yeah. Maybe I'll do deadlifts with those. That's basically
there you go. There you go.
But what about training environment where you're at? Are you training by yourself? Do you have a team, a person that you can use as a rabbit to kind of chase? Is your coach there with you? What's your training environment like where you're at there in Missouri?
I train by myself, which is hard. I love having just good energy in the gym, and it's always fun having someone to push you. But honestly, I don't need anyone to push me because I can push myself. I don't have to have an outside source of motivation, just because I want this so much, and I can give my best, and I don't want my best to be different whether I'm alone or whether I'm with other people. I think my best should be the same no matter what, if it's truly my best. Um, so training alone has taught me a lot, even though sometimes it's a little bit harder to get started. It's fun. It's just kind of my time, and I love that. I don't have my coach here with me. I'm in Missouri and he's in Florida. So we have great communication. We work so well together. But I think that the hardest thing there is not being able to get immediate feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So like I would love to just do a snatch and him be standing right there to tell me what I could do better. But we text, we FaceTime, and we really have the next best thing. And I do truly believe that he is the best. So I wouldn't want to ever change anything. Um, I It's so crazy. I think whenever I started with him about a year and a half ago, my snatch was like 155, and now it's 200. I think my overhead squat was 190, and I think that's what's improved the most. And it's 75 pounds more now at 265. Um, but it is just so crazy how much I'm just a completely different athlete now. I'm stronger, and that was what I really needed to get better at. But I am better in all aspects, and especially mentally. I think I can be hungrier and I can be more confident. Just, I trust him completely, and that takes something away from me to have to worry about. I no longer have to second guess whether what I'm doing is right, just because I get to trust him, trust the process, and then in competition, I get to see that really pay off.
Yeah, we're seeing Chad. Look at you. Were saying going to say something there. I
Yeah.
want to go for it.
I was just gonna say I'm just amazed at how strong you got Emma on your own. I mean, talking about a 155 snatch, I mean that's incredibly impressive, basically on your own. It just kind of goes to show, how much help someone can get when you've got the mental and physical talent and ability. How much better you can do with a little bit of help. And it's amazing that you've made those huge strides in that short amount of time on top of where you were already at. So that's just I can't get past that, Dave.
No, it's incredible. I'm envious myself of the strides that you're making. It's going to be incredible to watch how you guys all do next month in Madison. But with regards to you training by yourself, your coach is not there; he's down in Florida. You're by yourself in Missouri, and what we're seeing now is a lot of athletes start to join kind of super gyms, super teams, in training in environments where they have that push of that person who's also on that same level next to them, whether it be, comp train or at Mayhem or even Proving Crew down in Nashville. Have you ever considered trying to move to an environment that has athletes that are there to potentially push you, to be around the Tias, to be around the Catrins, the others that are kind of at that same level? Or is the situation they have in Missouri kind of the best that's available to you right now? Would you ever consider going to one of those?
The plan is definitely to train with my coach full time. That has kind of always been my dream when I started working with him. And even though it wasn't so much a possibility then, financially, obviously, but also with school and just other commitments I had here, there have just been so many steps I've taken since then to be able to make this a reality. And I think it will be really soon.
So you're considering moving down to Florida?
Yes.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. And we got to give a shout out to your coach. I mean, he seems like he's done incredible things. Who is your coach?
Matt Torres with Brute Strength.
Amazing. That's fantastic. So obviously Matt knows what he's doing. He's doing an incredible job with you as an athlete. And hopefully that move will allow you to take it to the next level. But I know all of us are really excited to see not only what you're going to be able to do in Madison, but that whole younger teenage crew taking on the older girls out there and giving them a run for their money.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I am so excited. I think the Granite Games it was awesome. It was so much fun, but I don't think that reflects my potential at all. It showed me how much potential I have, just a few mental and physical things I need to work on. And I've got about a month, and I'm still working with everything I have on those things, having so much fun, just seeing all of this really big improvement. And I think I was different at the Granite Games than I was in quarterfinals in the Open. And I don't think that compares to how different I will be at the games.
I have no doubt. I know you work with one of our team members, Mike Malloy, on the nutrition portion of things. I'm curious kind of what we talked a little bit about your training now, especially now that you're not in school during the summer, but what's daily life look like in terms of sleep and nutrition for you?
Yeah, I had so much trouble sleeping just a few months ago, and Mike and I feel like we tried everything and nothing helped. So finally, he was like, just go to bed later. I know it sounds bad, but now I go to bed like 10:30 or 11-ish, which I've always felt like was way too late for an athlete. But that's okay because I just sleep in till like 8 or 8:30 or so. Um, Normally will spend a few minutes just I think it's important to win the morning, and I like to journal. I like to really just set intentions for the day and see where I want to improve. Have breakfast, and then do my first session. I always love the first session. Just I feel like it's always a new start, no matter how the day's gone or how the week's gone. There are just so many opportunities in the first session, and like that's the best you will feel all day, so you take advantage of it. um, Eat lunch, like a really big lunch, because you got to get recovered. um, and then I also love session two, just because by that point, I mean, most days you feel pretty beat up, and I think session two tests how bad you want it, and really even strengthens you in that way, like strengthens your why. And then have dinner. Depending on what time it is, I might take some time to read and just relax. Always have my bedtime oats and then go to bed. So food is a huge part of my daily life. I I'm so well fueled now, and I can see that benefiting every aspect of my life. Training, obviously, but I also just feel better, and I feel like I have more energy, and I feel like I get to just be a better person to the people around me, and just be able to do more and feel better, sleep better, perform better. And I love it. Mike is the best.
He is the
Yep.
best.
Yeah, he is. And, talking about sleep and nutrition, I'm such a big proponent of, trying to get people to step away from this idea of these major differences that we all have as humans. I'm always trying to bring people back to, hey, we're mostly the same because we're human. So what are the basics that we all need to accomplish? But certainly when it comes to sleep and nutrition, I mean, there are those variations that we all have. We're all on our own clock. And I know for me, I trained and performed better when I just let myself go to bed at the time when I got tired. And that was, my best bedtime was probably 1 or 1:30 in the morning. And it sounds crazy that an elite athlete is, going to bed that late. But when you have the ability to sleep in, or quote unquote sleep in, like you said, it's not really sleeping in for you. It's you sleeping to your clock. So I would get up at 9:30 or 10, and then I would go train, and then I would take a nap, and then I would go train again. And I think that that's something that contributed remarkably to my success. So I'm glad that you guys have found a bedtime for you, and that just speaks to the genius of Mike Malloy right there to kind of uh, play with some things and experiment a little bit, and to make that bold statement of, hey, just go to bed later. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it falls a little bit in line with what we were talking about with Allison Brager, who was on our podcast, but also a lecturer at our last Power Monkey camp, talking about that everyone's time is different. There is no universal, you should be going to bed at this time. This is optimal for each person. Some people just genetically are better suited to go to bed later, and their day is just pushed a little bit further along the line. And when you have the ability to not have to wake up at 5 a.m., and you have the ability to get a full night's sleep, you get your 8.4 hours of sleep, which is that average that's recommended,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then you're going to be well suited to be able to take advantage. And then, like you said, Emma, win the morning. So if that morning is at 5 a.m. for you, you can win at 5 a.m. If it's at 8:30, then you're going to win at 8:30. So it is just about making sure that you're finding exactly what's optimizing for your training. These are all things that I didn't have available to me when I was your age.
Mm-hmm.
Chad, I don't know about you. Like I didn't have any of this stuff available, the knowledge, the ability to actually implement. So it's just awesome to see athletes at 17 be able to access so many great minds to be able to say, okay, my nutrition, my training, my sleep, my stuff inside and outside of the gym are aligned so well so that I can optimize the actual, performance on the competitive setting. It's incredible to see. And I wish that's what we've always tried to do, Chad, right? Is pass along what we've learned to the next generation, and to see it actually come to fruition, and to see an athlete like Emma actually put all the things in place. It's amazing. And I'm excited. I'm a fan to be able to watch you do what you do over the next, not just month at the games, but over the next decade, because I know your career is going to be a long one.
Yeah, we're all going to be, just watching and waiting to watch again. And absolutely, I think not only us, but so many people that watched you through these past couple months and really seemingly burst onto the scenes and come to light. But really, what I want people to remember is that you have been doing this for a long time. You've been working on things for a long time, since you were 10. And even though that sounds strange to say that you've actually had those goals for so long and from such a young age, I mean, it's paying dividends at this point. And it's going to be a pleasure to watch you just stand there toe to toe with these athletes that have been doing it on the highest level for many, many years. So what are, as we head towards the end of this recording here, you've talked a lot about your mindset and things that you want to do, and your ultimate goal is to win. Are there any other, goals in between that you have? Any specific goals that you have?
The year I have chosen that I want to be my first year to win is 2024. And whenever I started working with Bruce Strength, I talked to Nick Fowler first. And he said, write out a 1-year goal, a 5-year goal, and a 10-year goal. That was in 2019. So I was like, well, 5 years from now is 2024. That sounds really good. I love how it just worked out like that. So that was the goal I set whenever I didn't believe in myself as much as I do now. So that goal might be earlier. This year at the games, I love having a specific goal, but I have kind of talked with my coaches, and we have not set just a really specific goal, like top whatever. I just want to be able to feel like I've maximized everything I was capable of in every workout. And I believe if I do that, instead of feeling like I need to perform a certain way or beat a certain amount of people to control the outcome, I know I can't control the outcome, but I can control everything I do and hopefully get the outcome I want. So my goal is always to win. But also, this will be the first competition I've ever gone into understanding that as long as I really give my best effort and have my best strategy, have my best execution, best mindset throughout the workout, that will be my best performance. And if I do that in every workout, I will be really, really proud. And however this year turns out, I want to just keep getting better every year until I get what I ultimately want. And then I want to be dominant.
There you go. Well, I'm certainly hoping the dumbbell lunges come up for you again at the games. That's my hope.
Me too. The more dumbbells, the better.
Well, Emma, thank you so much for the time. I'm a huge fan. I can't wait to watch you in person. And we may have mentioned this in the past, but we'd love to have you out at our Power Monkey camp at some point. I think you get a big kick out of it and enjoy the experience.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun. I love talking about what I'm passionate about. I love just getting to share my big goals and big dreams. And I think the more I share them, the more I believe them. And really the less they intimidate me, because now I'm not scared to say this at all. So thank you so much. I've had a lot of fun.
Of course, of course. Now, before I get you out of here, we got a couple last minute quick questions for you, all right?
Okay.
All right, first one, what sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics?
Gymnastics.
Ooh, that was quick.
I was hoping she was going to say weightlifting. She said how much she said she loved the snatch. I was like, I thought I had this one in the bag.
I'm sorry, Chad. She is on my team. I will take her gladly. All right. let's move on from that one. I don't think it.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to talk her out of that. I mean, that was quick.
Overall, though, definitely cardio.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, we don't have to tell Chris that, right? We don't have to don't know about that one. Is there any guests that you think we should have on the podcast that would be great? Anyone that you've come across lately, someone that we should have on?
I think my coach, Matt Torres, would be an awesome guest. He is one of those people I can talk to. I feel like I could talk to him forever and still learn and grow from it. I love when we get to talk, just because there's no small talk. Like he knows what I want, and I know that he can help me get there. Mm-hmm. And I respect him so much as a coach, and I know he respects me so much as an athlete. And he just has so much good stuff to say. And he's not one of those people who just keep saying the same thing in different ways. Like he is so knowledgeable in really every aspect, and I love talking to him.
Love it. Gotta pencil him in there. That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. He'd be a great guest. Last couple questions here. Any books that you've come across here recently that you'd recommend?
Yes, I love Relentless by Tim Grover. I think that's really the first book I've ever read that has made me feel so understood. He talks a lot about just the killer instinct and just about wanting to win and not apologizing for that. And you don't, what he says, you don't have to love the process. You just have to crave the end result so much. And I agree with that as a whole, but I think it helps to love the process, and I do. But that's such a good reminder that on the bad days, you can still be so motivated and so driven, even when you're not having a lot of fun. Any amount of pain and training is worth it to win.
Awesome. I love the rundown of that book, and certainly you have that killer instinct, no doubt about it. And I'm glad that you came across a book like that to help you understand yourself a little bit better. And so hopefully our audience will go check that out as well. And Emma, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, to get to know you a little bit more. As much of a fan as I was before, I'm even more so now. I'm looking forward to watching you, as I know everyone else is. Give us your Instagram handle so our listeners can keep up with you.
Yeah, it is Emma Cary with 2 Y's.
Emma Cary with 2 Y's. Awesome. Well, to our Power Monkey Fitness family, if you're not already following Emma, please go do so and keep up with her as we are going to. Also, as always, be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Also, check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Ollie Chad. And on behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. And until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.